We talked to Hunter Harvey earlier. How important do you think this season is for him, big picture, as far as his career goes, 8 years removed from being a first-round pick, still trying to become established, still trying to stay healthy and give you a full season?
Yeah, I think we all know how great of an arm he has and how important he is to us. But like I've been saying for a couple of years now, it's really about him establishing health and him being able to pitch for a full season. And it's just something he's had a tough time with for a lot of reasons over the course of his career. And I know he's ready. This is the best he's ever felt. And he's come in camp looking great, looking really strong. So, yeah, he's a big piece for us. We really believe in him and his arm and his makeup. So, yeah, the bottom line is just try to keep him healthy.
Rich, you can go ahead.
Hey, Brandon, I know you're weeks away from having to think about the final composition of the roster, but how important with a 26-man roster is versatility going to be when you're looking at the bench players, especially if you only have three, if you go with 14 pitchers, you only end up with
well, definitely if we go with 14 pitchers, there's no doubt about it. The more pitchers you have, the more versatility we're going to need from our position players. But yeah, I think that we're entering a season unlike any other that we've entered, and that the season was so short last year. So I think there's so many question marks regarding pitchers, pitch usage, how much, how pitchers are going to react during a 6-month season after an interrupted season last year. So I think versatility on the mound, guys are going to be able to cover you innings, as well as versatility on the field, guys being able to play in multiple positions, because you might be pitcher heavy on your roster during the season. So guys that can play multiple positions are always there at a premium, but even more so this year.
Joe Trezza, you're up.
Brandon, kind of along those lines in terms of the pitcher workload stuff, what is the message this spring for guys like Dean Kremer or Keegan Aiken, young guys, in terms of like what you can reasonably expect out of them and what you want them to show, even though they might not have as much opportunity to maybe show it from an innings perspective as they usually would?
Well, I think right now we're not giving them any sort of limit, or we're not talking about limiting them in any way. I think we're going to see how the season progresses, and we'll have conversations, but that's down the road. Right now, I just want them to get ready for the season, focus on breaking camp healthy, focusing on improving every single day. They've only been in the big leagues for a month, so it was a great experience for both of them, and now it's about making this club and being a part of the rotation and it's just trying to continue to improve. But as the innings and those type of things come along throughout the summer, those are issues that we'll talk about and discuss, but nothing that we've communicated with the player or really talked about, from a strict innings limit, et cetera.
John Miola, you're up.
Brandon, what have your impressions so far? I'm sure they've at least had one bullpen of the 2 Rule 5 picks, Earler and Wells.
Yeah, I like their arms. They're big physical guys. Wells is he's a big boy. It's downhill. It's every bit of 6'6" and big body and with a great arm. So I'm going to take a long look at him. Scarola is a guy that he's bigger in person to me than I saw on film, in a good way. He's I talked to Ben about him a couple nights ago. So I watched his bullpen and then gave Ben a little bit of an update. But I really like his arm also, his pitch mix. He's going to be a strike thrower. So yeah, it's 2 really interesting arms that we're going to get a long look this spring.
Steve Molesky, you're up.
Brandon, Dean Kremer had a lot of success with the cut fastball with the Orioles. He told us today that he never quite manipulated the slider the way he wanted it, so he went home during quarantine and worked on a cut fastball. Is it impressive or surprising that in seemingly a short amount of time a pitch could become so good for him?
I think Dean's just got a really good feel to pitch, and he understands himself very well. But he's got a good feel to spin the baseball whether it's the breaking ball, the changeup. I think he's got a really good feel for his delivery, and it's pretty advanced. So him working on something, understanding what he needs to work on, and following through and getting it, I think that's not a surprise to me, just because I think he's a real student of pitching and student of pitch design, etc. So I was just so impressed with him that last month, being able to make some adjustments that he did in a short amount of time, taking it into the off season, working on some things, and I think you'll see him continue to get better and better.
Dan Connolly, you're up.
Brandon, last year you tried to be pretty careful with some of these relievers, and Hunter said today about, back-to-backs, and that's something you were kind of careful with last year. How important is it for him to be able to do back-to-backs, and really just over in general, how important is it to have relievers that can do back-to-backs, given the fact that you're going to have likely less relievers?
I think it's individual when it comes to back-to-backs later in camp. But yeah, that is going to be important going into the season, 26-man roster. Guys that are able to maintain health and be able to be durable for us. That's not something that I'm going to push in spring training with some. It's something that maybe we'll wait for the season to start and then continue to monitor and someone like Hunter, I just want him to be healthy. So if that means he does no back-to-backs in spring training, and I wait till the season, or we don't do it during the season with him, I don't know yet. But it's just he's going to be somebody we monitor closely. And like I said, it's just going to be an individual. It's going to be all individual on how we really ramp these bullpen guys up.
Rich with a follow-up.
Hey, Brandon, what are your impressions so far of Rutschman from what you saw a year ago to where he is now?
I've only seen him in the intake trailer. Look good there.
Nathan Ruiz, you're up.
Hey, Brandon, earlier you mentioned that Dean's kind of a student of pitch design, I think was how you put it. Is that something you see more with guys in this organization than maybe you did in the spring of 2019?
I just think it's something you're seeing more with younger players throughout the league. I think that with the advanced knowledge of analytics, the guys going to, pitching, drive line, et cetera, guys going to places to try to develop their pitches more, to try to work on something during the offseason. That wasn't around 15, 20 years ago. Guys got ready on their own and had a pitching plan during the offseason. But now guys are really students of what their pitch mix is, what they want their pitch design to look like, what their goals are from that standpoint. So yeah, I just think it's generally the young players have a better feel for the analytics involved in pitching.
John Mioli with a follow-up.
We saw on social media that Matt Harvey is there. Are there any other new reports that came early today?
Well, Harvey was out here today, so
yeah.
He was. Yeah, he stretched and played catch. So we're gonna ramp him up when he's ready. Yeah, it was good to see him and seen him on the other side of the field, but never met him. And it was nice to meet him and looking forward to watching him pitch this spring.
Any position players start early today?
Rio Ruiz was out there today. Who else was out there? I think it was the same. Yeah, same as yesterday, I think, adding Rio. If I didn't mention Rio yesterday.
All right. Well, that'll wrap things up with Brandon. Thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Thank you, guys.
See everyone tomorrow.
I don't finish like this.
Yeah, Hunter, what was this off season like? Was this off season any different? Did you do anything different because of this history of health issues?
Wasn't a whole lot different. We tried a few new things on just a little bit more throwing and how we went about that, but really it wasn't a whole lot different. Maybe just a little bit more throwing.
Joe Trezza, you can go ahead.
Hey, Hunter, your injury history aside, just looking at what the pandemic did last year in terms of limiting innings that everybody threw, you didn't throw that many competitive innings. Was that in the back of your mind this offseason in terms of how you prepared and how much do you think you can throw this year?
I didn't really think about that a whole lot. And, as soon as we got to the off season, I treated it just like, if we'd have played a normal season, I threw a lot of innings. I took my same amount of time off and then got right back into it and, got my body ready and my arm ready to come into spring and, try to pitch a full season healthy.
John Muley, you can go ahead.
Hunter, kind of a different variation of the same questions. Sadly, you've been, you've mentioned doing kind of the same things in the off season. Is there anything, that might be considered unconventional or not traditional that you've thought about doing to make it so that you might end up with different results?
Really, I would say just more throwing. I would say we doubled the amount I normally throw. Really just trying to, build my arm up and, get the body used to, possibly taking the ball back-to-back days or, 2 on, 1 off and then come back for another. So really just trying to prepare for that and, be ready for any role they throw at me.
Mark Viviano, you can go ahead.
Hey, Hunter, looking ahead to the game experience this year, you've mentioned a lot of relievers talk about the adrenaline rush of coming out of the bullpen, and a big part of that is the crowd. How is it without the crowd? How have you adjusted, and how much are you looking forward to getting some people back in there?
Yeah, it was much different. But once you get up there and a big league hitter gets in like Void or any of those guys, it just turns right back on. You get the adrenaline, you get everything going. I am looking forward to having people in the stands. Something about it just it gets you going, it fires you up, it gets the adrenaline going even more. So, whatever we can get this year, we'll take it. But I'm looking forward to people being back in the stands.
Joe Trezza, you can go ahead.
Hunter, besides throwing, what else did you do this offseason?
Normal. We kind of changed up the workout routine. Joe and Rio were sending me stuff, so we did some stuff that was a little bit different, but not a whole lot. And then other than that, it was a lot of hunting.
Rich Dubroff, you can go ahead.
Hey, Hunter, during your time in the Orioles organization, there have been a number of different pitching coaches. You've heard a lot of different voices. Now you have Holt. Is there anything different in his approach that he's talked to you?
He's been really good with, teaching guys how to spin the ball. He's got a good idea on how to do that. He's helped me out a lot with, trying to get my off speed more consistent. He's really easy to talk to when it comes to stuff like that. So, and tunneling pitches, anything like that. He's really good with any of that stuff. So it helps out a lot having him.
Steve Molesky, you can go ahead.
Hunter, as you try to have more success in the future, can you look back to 2019 and the debut you had, how special, though it was a few innings, but they were pretty strong for you. Is that still meaningful to you, or is too much time passed?
It's always going to be meaningful, the first, month in the big leagues. So I think I'll always be able to go back on that moment and, just that, that month of first being in the big leagues after, the 5 or 6 years that I had with all the injuries and not pitching and, that'll always be there. It'll always probably be one of my greatest moments, just in my career, just knowing that, we battled through all the injuries and, we had reached the big leagues.
Time for one final question. John Mealy, go ahead.
Hunter, towards the end of last year, we talked to Doug Brocale, and he mentioned to us some of the differences in your splitter, changeup, whatever you want to call it, in terms of, throwing it effectively versus throwing it for a good shape. Where would you say you are in that spectrum, and what?
I got some of it. I don't think so. Might have just been him.
John, do you want to repeat that?
To make that, the pitch that it can before we go forward.
I caught the first part of that question. I didn't hear the end.
I think John's having some internet difficulties. All right, we can just wrap it up. We'll give it 10 more seconds.
Sorry about that. Can you hear now? Yeah. I think it's sound like you can hear me. Doesn't look like you do.
John's question is, in basic form, how do you feel about your splitter?
Well, Holmesy actually lives about an hour from me. He lives in Asheville, so he come down a couple times this off season and worked with me. We stayed in contact with Holt, and we worked on some stuff, and trying to get my arm on time more, and been able to be more consistent with my off speed. And we kind of cleaned up my arm path a little bit, and my splitter has been, for me, I feel the best it's ever felt since I started throwing it. So I'm looking forward to see how it's going to play in games.
All right, well, that'll wrap things up. Thanks.
Yeah, good. You recall about this, we want you to record it.
Trying to do in this offseason?
I don't think anything that happened last season. Actually, it might have. I just try to build on just getting better in general, not necessarily just to pitch at the big league level, but better myself. Work out some mechanical kinks that I think I need to work on, and try to build my stuff to get just that tick better, regardless of what level.
Dan Connolly, you can go ahead.
Building off of that, Dean, what about personally? I mean, you're a major leaguer for the first time this offseason. How is that any different for you this year than, past off seasons?
To be honest, it really didn't settle in. I still felt like just a baseball player, just trying to get better and continue to grow and try to stick up there.
Steve Molesky, you can go ahead.
Dean, was the cutter always as prominent for you as it was in those major league starts last year, or did something change? There was some talk about work and improvements you kind of made on it over the last 12 months. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I always tinkered with a slider, but could never really get a full slider to break as much as it needed to. So during quarantine, while I was already built up, I figured I'd work on a cutter and try to keep it smaller and firmer, and just kind of toyed around with the release points, and ended up turning out to be a pretty good pitch so far.
Rich Dubroff, you can go ahead.
Hey, Dean, for the first couple of days, we talked with Holt and we talked with Hyde about you guys having innings counts and coming off a short season last year. What was your preparation because of that different in the off season? And what are your thoughts about being on a strict innings count because of the short season last year?
It didn't really affect anything that I did during the off season. It was a similar buildup, went through my various phases throughout the whole off season. And then that's probably one of the last things I'm going to think about, because I think although they're going to have strict limits, I think they're also going to ask how guys are feeling and how they're performing. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a longer leash than maybe they've seemed to say, but I don't know. I'm not the coach.
Mark Viviano, you're up next.
Hey, Dean. This organization is counting on guys like you and a number of others coming up to the big leagues. As a guy who broke through to the big leagues last year, what can you impart to those guys coming up behind you in terms of what it took to make that next step to the big leagues and what the experience is like?
For some guys, it's timing. For some guys, it's stuff. Just in general, I say keep your head down and keep working hard. And I mean, their time will eventually come.
Joe Trezza, you're up.
Dean, do those workload issues that Rich asked about concern you at all from an impact standpoint? Like you finally made the majors last year, and then in a normal year, you'd have maybe X amount of innings to make an impression. And now, that number might be smaller this year. Do you think about that at all?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, for every time I step out on the field, I'm trying to help put the team in a position to win and play well. So it doesn't matter whether it's 20 innings or 40 innings or 150 innings. My goal out there is the same as always.
Nathan Ruiz, you're up.
Hey, Dean, you were part of a pretty impressive rotation in Bowie a couple years ago. What's it like to see a lot of those guys now in camp on the 40-man roster, all competing for spots on the major league roster together?
It's awesome, man. I mean, all those guys really worked hard throughout that year, 19, and what they did in 20 was also pretty good from the standpoint of how much we actually could do. But yeah, it's awesome seeing familiar faces and guys that I've played almost a full season with, as opposed to guys who I just barely met for a month or two last year.
Joe Trezza with a follow-up.
Yeah, Dean, it's unrelated to the last question, but your flow has been getting a lot of love on social media. What are your hair goals?
Well, I'm up until this point, I've had 2 haircuts a year. I get one right before spring training. I get one right when I go home. This is actually the first time that I've like let it get long before spring. So I don't know. We'll see how much I can manage it throughout the whole season if I won't get a slight haircut during.
John Mioli with a follow-up.
Dean, your first spring training, I guess it was 2019. There weren't that many pitchers that you knew there. Like you mentioned, you had your whole Bowie staff here now. It's 2 years later. Do you feel like this is the start? You and Keegan getting up there last year, Bruce, some of these guys joining. Do you feel like this is the start of a new era in young pitching, getting to the big leagues and sticking there for the Orioles?
Yeah, I think so a little bit. I mean, you can always learn from guys that have already been there and they're going to continue to be there. But for the most part, I think the young guys are definitely hungry and they want to show what they got.
Mark Viviano with a follow-up.
Yeah, couldn't let this go since you got a hair question there, Dean. But is there something to, I don't know, the personality of having that out there? Because you see a few guys in the league that are letting it go, and even your teammate, Hunter Harvey.
Right.
There's something about the personality or the presentation that shows?
I don't know. I've kind of had long hair for most of my post-high school life. It hasn't been this long on a consistent basis, but I don't know. I'm from California. I kind of got to look the part, flip-flops and long hair and a necklace.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, that'll wrap things up with Dean. Thanks for joining us, Dean.
Thank you, guys.
We'll drop off this so I can upload the recording and we'll jump back on at 1:15 with Brandon.